Welcome to the Morgan News Hour. I'm your host, Deanna Neal, and joining me today is CJay. She is the artistic director of dance in Bmore. Welcome to the Morgan News Hour.
Hello, it is so good to be here.
From all of us
all right,
at
now,
WEAA,
you have an exciting show that's coming to Baltimore
and being
right
a part
now.
of our family.
Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yes, Rise and Shine. It's original gospel musical, and
broadcasting
we are using
live
dance
from the campus of
many
Morgan State
styles,
University,
liturgical dance, hip-hop
WEAA
dance, contemporary
88.9
dance,
FM
jazz,
and HD1
as well as gospel
Baltimore.
music, choral music, traditional gospel music, some contemporary gospel music, to tell the story of creation and tell the story through the eyes of a teacher working with children and trying to help them to understand who they are and how they are loved, and that even when in the midst of choices that we make that may cause us to go off the path that we intended or that God intended, that there is redemption, that there's opportunities to change, there's opportunities to grow and be united in the family of God, and it brings a lot of hope and a lot of joy. There's a lot of laughter in this show that's unexpected, and we're really excited. It's been an exciting rehearsal process.
Okay, now I was told that there are also children in this show as well that are participating. How did you go about casting some of the community?
Yeah, so I've worked with children for many, many years, and I used to teach at Baltimore School for the Arts, and a friend of mine's son is in the Twigs program, and she was posting about him and his performance, and I was like, oh wow, he is very good. And so I reached out to her. He was one of my first calls. And then this last summer, I have something called AMP Camp. It's an arts mentorship camp for young students, 3rd through 5th grade, and a young lady who was performing with us just had so much energy, stage and presence, and I remembered her and I called her in. And then there's a young man in my church who is just loves music, specifically gospel music, and can know it by ear, can conduct it, has so much personality, and just seems like a person who needs the arts in his life to flourish. And I reached out to him and his parents. And then there was one other student who was a part of a youth program, Voices of Carmen, that we lead every summer. And so we have 2 youth in the show, but 4 youth who cover those roles.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Now, you spoke about him needing the arts. How badly do you feel as though our youth need the arts at this current point in time in society? So
not only our youth, but everyone needs the arts. Dance in Bmore's mission is to create movement and music for every age and stage of life. And so whether you are 2 years old or 92 years old, there is a Dance in Bmore program that you can move in, that you can sing in, and that you can connect with community members. There's something about music, there's something about movement that allows you to express yourself in sometimes ways that words don't come to you. And so we all need to express, whether it's the joy that we feel, the gratitude, or the stress and trauma that we feel. It's a part of healing when we get to express ourselves creatively and artistically. And I tell people, when do we age out of creativity? And if you shut that part of yourself off, you're not being your whole self. You've got to stay creative and stay engaged, even if a lot of people say, oh, I used to dance, or I used to sing, or sometimes I sing here. Keep doing it. You don't have to do it professionally for it to be a part of your life and a part of how you express yourself as a whole person.
Now, you're talking about your dance company, and it just so happens to be Stress Awareness Month. How does dance help us to reduce our stress level?
So there's a level of focus that you need for your brain to tell your body, move your right foot here, now bring it back in here. Now move this 2 times here and bring it back in here. I can't be stressing about my taxes when I'm trying to move my right foot this way and that way, right? And so there's a level, I remember, being in dance class and being like, I can't think about anything else right now. I'm just going to singularly focus on my arms, on the rhythm of the music. And so it allows you a pause. And don't we need a pause sometimes from all the noise that's in our heads? And so dance is very therapeutic that way, but also the physical endorphins and the movement that you're able to do that makes you sweat, that helps you exercise and gain some physical health. And then the mental dexterity. There are things that we do in our Elder Arts program that are very specific to cognitive function. And so the movements that we're doing, crossing the center of the body with your arms, the movement of call and response, response and rhythm and rat-a-tat-tat. That's math in movement, right? There's so much that dance can do. And the research shows more than any other form of exercise, tennis, jogging, that a deterrent from Alzheimer's is dance, because there are pathways in your brain that will actually be moving when you have to create and pick up new information through movement. You should definitely Google it. Let me see what the research says about movement and about dance and how it impacts your mind as you age.
CJay, how do you expect this production to impact the lives of Baltimoreans?
Oh my goodness. So we are so excited to be opening Rise and Shine on Easter weekend. We are so excited to be sharing these songs of hope, of resilience, of encouragement. We need this. We need to laugh. We need to sing together. We need to celebrate the beauty of life and creation, and remember that there is beauty even in the midst of the darkness. Remember that we can rise and we can shine even in the midst of our challenges, and all of that is wrapped into this. The singers we have are phenomenal. Like, just power. Every song, you're going to be like, woo, child, I need a break. We literally take intermission because there's nothing else you can do but just lay down for a minute and take a break after this brother sings Stan. You just need to sit down somewhere. And then when we come back, we're doing something that I started choreographing in the church. My mom would do church plays, and I would, choreograph little pieces, but the stories that are inside of these songs, we have Stephanie Powell as a choreographer, who's a beautiful choreographer and well-known dancer, liturgical dancer, Francis James. I mean, people are going to be moved not only by the movement, the style of music, but the stories that relate to who you are and what you need to feel nourished. And I think that's what this show is going to bring.
CJay, can you tell me a little bit more about how you actually went about finding the choir in this production?
Yes. So Dance and Be More started a collaboration with Camerata, Baltimore, and they're a choral group led by James Mayo, and he's a phenomenal choir director. And they had a Black History Month event in February, and when we came together and choreographed a piece to their a cappella version of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And we did that at a few churches around Baltimore, and it was just beautiful. The singing was beautiful, the dancing was beautiful. And what I love is often when I'm collaborating with folks, it's not so much the creative collaboration, but it's the vibe. It's the way that I saw James working and encouraging the singers, and at the same time being meticulous about every note and the tone and the style, yet playful in the environment. And even after the show, I remember very distinctly, you get to sense of what the culture is within a creative environment. And I remember after, I was sort of like, oh my gosh, you guys were amazing. Woo, woo, woo. And they were sort of looking at me like, okay, thank you, but sort of polite. And then James came through the door and was like, oh my goodness, y'all were amazing. And then they went, yay! And it was like the leader, the teacher affirmed that you did what we've been working on and what we've been working towards. And the way that they celebrated together just told me that this was an organization as well as a creative collaborative team that we wanted to work with again. And so fast forward, they were like, oh my gosh, this was great. How might we? And I said, well, let me tell you something. I got a little show coming up around Easter called Rise and Shine. And I listened to several of their selections. Striving for God is a stunning choral piece that opens up our show, and it's very dimly lit. We're at the Voxel Theater, which is a state-of-the-art theater that's going to have projection on a full wall, projection on a wall across, and 8 projectors that reflect onto the floor. And so the imagery of creation, the imagery of the water rising when Noah is building the boat is going to be an immersive experience for you. And so Camerata is the Greek chorus within the piece, and just bringing stellar vocals. And then James was able to work with our singers, where we combine the singing ensemble with Camerata Baltimore on several of the songs.
This seems like a very technical production. How long did it take for the community, for the script, for everything to come together? I'm talking about how long were the practice hours?
So we are still practicing. We are in tech. And so last night we were there till 1 o'clock, finishing up the technical aspects of lighting the show. And that's the beautiful thing about the residency that we are doing at the Voxel Theater, where local artists are able to submit a proposal and have free space at the Voxel Theater for 2 to 3 weeks, 24 hours a day, keys to get in and do the work at your own pace. Oftentimes you're renting a space or inside of a space that has a custodial staff that's like, girl, we need to go home. So you got to be out by 9:30. And so we let the actors go, but the technical team was able to stay and work creatively until the job was done.
Till 12 midnight?
Oh yeah, that's normal.
Okay, when
theater.
did you start practicing for this production? Now, we're here in the School of Global Journalism and Communication. And so this is a great look into what it's going to take for, these future minds to get into this industry. Can you talk about the long hours and even the rehearsal times? How long have they been rehearsing?
So our rehearsal process tends to be a little shorter than most. I work pretty fast, and we've been rehearsing for about 2.5 months. And sometimes people rehearse for 2.5 months, but they're rehearsing 4 to 6 days a week. We're actually rehearsing about 3 days a week, and I'm very specific about who I need on which day, because this is community theater and people have their regular jobs that they do. And so I want to make the most of the time that we spend together. And then once we get closer to the show, which is where we are now, we're in there every day. And so, we're in there in the evening, 6 to 9:30 or 10 o'clock, getting ready for our previews, which start April 18th and 19th, and then for our big opening Saturday night, April 19th.
Can you talk about the transformation from the beginning of rehearsal until now?
Ooh. So what's been really interesting is from the first rehearsal, what I've seen with the cast, with stage management, with the dancers is joy. Just everyone just smiling like, oh my gosh, I think this is my favorite show. We've just started and I'm in love with this show. I'm in love with the layers of storytelling, the different characters and all the roles that we're playing to reenact these biblical stories, from creation to David and Goliath, to Moses, to Joseph and his brothers, to Mary and boy Jesus, and then Jesus's ministry. And so to be able to see, and what's interesting too is that not everyone in our cast comes from a Christian background. Yet everyone feels inspired by the humanness of the stories that we are telling, the relatability, the connection, the desire for family, the desire for love and trust, and faithfulness is universal, and that is shining through. And so even folks, parents of the kids are like, oh my gosh, they come home, they're so happy. They are so joy-filled. They are singing these songs. So that has been really wonderful and consistent from the beginning. And then each layer, people are stepping back going, this is deeper than I thought. This is not your, Easter pageant. This is getting deep and making you think. And people are going to reflect on this show for days and days after they leave the theater.
How is it exposing people who non-traditionally wouldn't believe in Christ to Christ?
So it's...
Because that's essentially what you're doing.
So it's interesting. It is. And I think who I'm introducing them to is someone that is reflected in us if it's done the right way. Hopefully there's some love, there's generosity, there's empathy, there's kindness, and the reflection that they see in the way, the rapport that we create in the environment in our rehearsal, they've been seeing a little bit of Christ that whole time. And then as we start to unpack his story, there's so many people who are like, I never knew that. I never knew that. And so I was like, this is the easiest script to write. I'm just in BibleGateway.com cutting pasting. I was like, well, that's one. Here we go. That scripture, that story. There's a Beatitudes. I'm put that in there and just bringing it all together. And so, yes, it's an introduction. And I think it's going to allow people to reflect on not the version that they've gotten from society or the version that they got even from, a family member, because there's a lot of church hurt that's out there, right? And so I want them to see the person that made a decision, the spiritual being that decided, I'm not going to give up on you, and I'm coming through. I'm showing up where you are, and I'm going to love you where you are, and I'm going to leave that love with you and give you the choice to love me back. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to share the simplicity of that invitation. And who knows what seeds are planted.
CJay, you've been embarking and planting seeds for a while now. Now, you mentioned to me earlier that you actually were a part of AFRAM. I want you to tell the community how you were a crucial part, a very important part of AFRAM, and Mama Ernestine Jones from Gospel Grace.
Yes, I remember meeting Ernestine, 17 years ago. My husband and I were living in New York City, and I was working as a director and a choreographer there. And we have friends here in Baltimore, and they introduced us to some of the folks who were producing the AFRAM. And after talking with us for a while, they asked if we could be in charge of the production for the main stage on Sunday. So 10 to 12 hours of programming of all gospel, faith-based material. And so we started traveling back and forth from New York, visiting different churches, meeting with dancers, liturgical teams, choirs, casting folks to be a part of that all day. Connecting with Donnie McCurkin and his team, because he was one of our main headliners in the evening. And it was really beautiful. And what I loved was getting to know, that's how I got to know the creative community of Baltimore, was doing the AFRAM. And we were living in New York, but we were looking to move. I had been there for 18 years, had worked on Broadway for about 15 of those years. My husband's a music producer, worked for a jingle house doing music production for television. And we were like, New York's a young man's game. We're ready to move on. And so we were looking at Atlanta. We were looking at Nashville. And then when we came to Baltimore, we were like, well, look at here. We knew we wanted a smaller city. We wanted a creative, rich city. And that's what we saw in Baltimore. That it, they say small-timore. It had that smaller vibe and feel, but the creativity was potent. It was rich. It was robust. Music, dance, all kind theater. And I was like, wow, there's a lot here. And then we would go back to New York. And so we did that 2 summers in a row. And then eventually, we wind up transitioning and moving to Baltimore, and have been here for 15 years, have loved it. About 6 or 7 of our friends from New York have also moved down to Baltimore and are creatives here in the Baltimore art scene. And we love working with them, and just, the spirit of collaboration here. When you live somewhere else that's very competitive and cutthroat, and I can't, tell you anything that I'm doing because you might steal it and da-da-da-da. And then you come to Baltimore and folks are like, oh, you do this? I do this. You got a nickel? I got a nickel. I bet you can find some folks and bring together a quarter and do a show. And so I've done that a dozen of times, through, there's a professional dance collaborative. There's small theater collaboratives. There's right now an August Wilson collaborative over 3 years with like 7 different theater companies, collaboratively producing a century series of August Wilson plays. That kind of collaboration, I don't know if people know how rare it is for artists to work together to support and shout out each other's work and help to bring audiences to all of what is happening, that there's room for all of us, is the vibe that I get here in Baltimore. And it's one of the reasons I love this city.
I want to know, if you could tell anybody anything about Rise and Shine, what would it be?
I would say, if you need encouragement, If you need your heart filled with joy, if you need to laugh, if you need to sing and move, even if it's just in your spirit, you need to come to Rise and Shine. You need to come to the Voxel Theater and get your tickets at voxel.org. It runs April 18th to 27th, and be among family. The cast is family. The kids in the show are family. The dancers, oh my goodness, they are beautiful, stunning storytellers, and we want you to be a part of it. You are welcome here.
You are welcome here. CJay, thank you for joining us here on the Morgan News Hour.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for your Morgan News Hour today. But remember, we'll see you again on Thursday for another episode.